Now. There we go. There's the noise that tells us. So if you don't want to be included in the recording, please contact us afterwards. And then if you've said anything during it which you don't want to be included, that's not a problem. Just let us know after the session. So we've got a few things that we're going to go through tonight. Thanks everyone for taking the time out to join us this evening. So we've got, as I say, a few things on the agenda. We know there's a couple of questions that have already come in that hopefully we'll be covering as part of this anyway. And then at the end, we will have the opportunity for any of you to ask any questions. Obviously, during the presentation itself, feel free to ask questions. If we can ask you to raise your hands when you do that, just so we can see what's happening. That would be most appreciated. Okay, so we'll start it off now. So we thought it was worth reminding you to start with what the balance of adjudicators versus events is. And I know we looked at, those of you who joined us in August, we looked at this. There hasn't been a huge amount of change since then. So you can see across the bottom, to remind you, you've got the different regions. So starting with East, then it goes across to East Midlands, then London, then the North East, then Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, West Midlands, and then Yorkshire. The dark grey tab shows 2023 tabs, so that's licenses, sorry. That's the far left of each of those sections. Then you've got your 2024 licenses in kind of the goldish type of colour. And then the number of adjudicators is in that sort of browny bronze colour. So you can see the mix of licenses to adjudicators. Obviously, it's not the full picture because we know that there's a concentration of events at certain times of the year. But ideally, you want to see more adjudicators than there are events. So we're more successful in some regions with that than others. So just to give you an idea of the demands on time there. We thought we'd start with a clarification of some rules. We know that some of the common questions that Ben and myself get at various different times relate to some of the rules. And there are some common themes that come up at regular times. So we thought we'd cover those as part of this evening. It can be sometimes that the wording is not clear or it's buried somewhere in the rule book and you've been unable to locate it. So we're just going to go through those now. So the first one is related to pacing and assistance at events. You sometimes find that you're visiting an event and there's perhaps a clubmate pacing another one. We have had cyclists, coaches, for example, cycling in an event. And for those of you who don't know or are not sure, Rule TR 6.3 covers this. And for the purposes of this rule, we haven't put all of the examples, we've just put the one here that applies to road races. The following examples shall be considered assistance and are therefore not allowed. So for road races, it's TR 6.3.1, which says pacing in races by persons not participating in the same race by athletes due to be lapped or about to be lapped or by any technical device other than those in 6.4.4, which we'll come on to in a sec, are not allowed. So if you've got a clubmate who thinks they're being helpful and they're going to jump into the race and pace another athlete or runner, that's not allowed unless the race director has arranged. Because the key thing here is that pacing is allowed if it's organised by the race director. And that means that it's universally available to all of the people in the race. So if a clubmate's jumping in with someone else, it's not universally available to everybody in the race and therefore is considered assistance and therefore is not allowed. What is allowed, as it says there, 6.4.4 is heart rate or speed distance monitors, stride sensors or similar devices. And for similar devices, we read that as a lot of the watches now that people have pace, time elapsed, heart rate, all in one device. So those devices are fine. They can be carried or worn by the athletes during an event, provided the device cannot be used to communicate with others. And the communicate with others is not so much, we know obviously some smartwatches now, you can see a WhatsApp message come up. It's more, you can't control that entirely, what's in the WhatsApp message, but the idea behind that is that they're not getting any coaching or any assistance, like someone's just about to overtake you, speed up, or indeed able to make outward things. Oh, how am I doing? What do I need to do? So it's not always easy to police, but generally GPS watches are allowed. Um, and you can see the definition there. So the other one we wanted to cover, we've had this come up quite a few times, actually, and it relates to rule TR5 S1, which is clothing. And this covers um, a multitude of different styles of races. It can be simple road races or multi-terrain races where the organizer has a team element to the competition. So it could be local clubs are competing against each other alongside athletes that are not from clubs. And there's some kind of trophy or award at the end of the process once they finished. And typically that takes the form of three to score, either through cumulative time or points, or there have been some other interesting scoring systems at different races as well. Um, there can be relay races as well, of course, where you've got people doing certain legs each. Obviously, road relays are the ones that are most commonly found in the club environment, but there are some multi-lap races where the organizer allows more than one person to compete and they make up a team together. So the rule actually says that in team or relay races, all competitors must wear registered vests or the same design and colour of the team representing, unless the referee has given permission for the change to be made. So, important thing to remember there is that the majority of local races, the referee is the race director. So, if the race director decides that not everyone needs to wear the same type of vest, that is for the race director to decide. And you'll note there that competitors must wear registered vests or the same design and colour. So it doesn't, at this level, at this local level, doesn't have to be the club vest. It could be that the team competition is open to unaffiliated clubs, groups, teams, etc. If they decide that is the same category as affiliated clubs, of course, and that is for the race director to decide. However, if it's county championship or higher, so county, area, regional, national, or international, then the teams or the people within those teams must wear the registered vest that has been approved by us at England Athletics. So the simple way to remember that is below county level, race director discretion, unless, of course, there's a separate referee. County championship or higher has to be the registered club vest. So it's quite simple. We do sometimes get clubs writing to us saying in a local race, someone wasn't wearing the club vest. But you can see from this in a local race, that's outside of our jurisdiction if the race director has allowed it. Obviously, if the race director has a rule that says everyone must wear the registered club vest, then that's what they have to do. Now, these ones are quite long, so I did take a screenshot from the rule book on these. So Apologies for the little black mark in the wheelchair words there. That's when I took the screenshot. Unfortunately, the cursor was there. I hadn't spotted that till now. So we wanted to cover wheelchairs and buggies. There's definitely queries we get on a fairly regular basis here on those. Um, so wheelchairs and buggies. So you'll see at the top there, it says the pushing of persons in any device is not permitted in any race held under UKA rules with the exception that a competition provider, so read that as race director or organizer, may, after due consideration within the risk assessment, determine that a pushed wheelchair or buggy designed for running may be accommodated towards the rear of the event on the condition the event meets, and this particular section says Run Britain, but obviously that's now RunEvents, license standards, and the participant is not attempting to compete against others. It's a lot of words to basically say that it's the race director's discretion whether they allow a wheelchair or a buggy, provided the buggy is designed for running, when they've done their safety and risk assessment. So if when the race director looks at it, they say, actually, our route's not safe for those two, we'll 100% support it. If they've done that safety and risk assessment and determined that it is safe, i.e. it's on a closed road, perhaps, there's not curbs or narrow spots that allow for it to happen, then we will obviously allow that. Should be accommodated towards the back, doesn't have to be the very back, towards the back. And one of the queries we've made recently is what is meant by not attempting to compete against others? Does that mean that they can't run for a time? Well, yeah, they can. Because we know that runners will try and get, a good time. If they're going to be vying for first place, no. But if they're going to be running hard, like they do when they go out independently, within reason, then that's acceptable. You'll see the next section there talks about wheelchair athletes and frame runners on road courses. Again, that's subject to a risk assessment. We will try wherever we can to support the race director if they're not sure what they need to risk assess. If they've done a risk assessment and they want to run it by us and see, do we agree with their assessment? We can't see their course, but we can give them general advice. And then the third section deals with, and there was some confusion around this. And indeed, we know there's been some phone calls from races. The carrying of a child by any participant is not permitted in any race. That is physically carrying a child. So whether that's in a baby harness, in their arms, on their back, that doesn't. We had a few people query whether that meant that the buggy couldn't be carrying a child. Well, the buggy can because it's not the person carrying the child. And that kind of made common sense to us because we're like, well, if we allow buggies in a race, surely there can be a child in the buggy. But we did check that with the insurers and the legal people, just in case our interpretation of carrying a child was different to theirs. They agreed with what we thought would be common sense. And the carrying is, as I say, physically holding the child in a harness on the front, in a harness on the back. Child in buggy is fine. Obviously, there are certain safeguarding issues around that if the child looks in distress. And we will be issuing some safeguarding guidelines to race directors, both about children and adults in the near future as well. So hopefully that's cleared that one up. And again, it's all subject to risk assessments in that section. Headphones is a hotly debated issue, and the compliance or otherwise of race directors we'll deal with later. But the actual rule, as you can see there, is that the wearing of headphones or similar devices, and you'll notice the words change slightly, other than medically, if you go online, there's an amendment to the rule, other than medically prescribed, has now changed to other than recommended by a medical professional, because there is no doctor that will medically prescribe headphones, but they may recommend them. So if you've got ADHD, some neurological disorders, that kind of thing, they might say, do you know, actually you would benefit from the use of them, but they won't write a prescription as such. Should be declared to the race director ahead of time, of course. But the wearing of headphones or similar devices is not permitted on any shared usage areas. So that includes open roads, parks, recreation grounds, seafront proms, public footpaths, and other areas where those not participating in the race may be present. And in 2024, when this rule book came out, and I know we've got a new one coming out next year, but the rule isn't due to change. There were parks or seafront proms that, although it was not really allowed or questionable, because they were shared usage, the wording on the previous rule said open roads. So we actually tightened the rule slightly because we know that there's lots of races in the country now that don't close roads, and they have moved off roads and into shared spaces like parks and promenades where members of the public can be walking, dog walkers can be, cyclists can be. So we actually just strengthened it slightly. Competitions held entirely on roads closed to traffic to anyone but the competitors can obviously allow they can allow any type of headphones they like, unless the race director has done a risk assessment and decides to strengthen that rule and not allow any headphones at all. However, bone conducting headphones are allowed, so headphones that work by conducting sound through bones. And here's the key bit, because we know technology has moved on. Do not sit in or on the ears are acceptable, but must leave the ear clear to hear. But the competition provider, again, can strengthen that rule. So bone conductors, as we define them, if I just turn my head slightly, they sit off the ear here, where I'm just pointing. If you can see there, I know my image is quite small on the call. So if it's on the ear or in the ear, but they claim it's bone conducting, the rule actually says not on or in the ear. So it's quite clear. And Richard, I can see your hand up. We'll come to you in just a second. A closed road or course, because there was a question, what's closed, what's open? A closed road or course is defined as that is closed by a TTRO, temporary traffic regulation order, or other notice issued by the local authority or highways authority. Because we know in some areas, for example, a TPC is used to close the road at the discretion of the authority or local highway. But it is important that people follow any stipulations. So it doesn't necessarily, a closed road doesn't necessarily have to be completely barriered unless the highways authority has said in order to close the road, it needs to be barriered, or they've put some kind of measure in place. So whatever that measure is, has to be followed. But if the route is designed to be closed, then that's fine. That is defined as closed. So hopefully that helps. Richard Wybrow, I know you've had your hand up there for a little while, partway through my explanation there. So do go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, Barry, good evening. Just with regard to the medical use of headphones, presumably, so the reason we don't wear headphones is because it's unsafe, because they can't hear instructions from marshals, etc. So someone claiming that they have a disability which requires them to wear headphones for, I'm not talking about hearing aids, I'm talking about the exclusion of noise, presumably they can be declined entry to the race because they're a risk.
It's a very good question. Very good question, Richard. I mean, obviously, we try and make races as open to people as possible because we want as many people to take part as possible. I'm really trying not to give you a politician's answer here as well. So, if a race director was concerned that the safety of that individual was compromised to such an extent that wearing headphones would make it unsafe for that individual to take part, then I think you'd be okay to exclude it. I would suggest in that eventuality that should a race director be in that position, that they contact us to check, because what we don't want is a race director to fall foul of any discrimination laws. Safety has to be paramount, but
Yeah,
obviously we've
sure.
got discrimination in there as well.
Yeah, but surely that's no different to saying that the race is not suitable for wheelchairs.
Yeah,
If
and
it's
that's
not
why I say
safe.
you
Yeah.
should be absolutely fine. But if there's any doubt, best thing to do is contact us. We can always run it by our legal people and say, look, this is what the race director's been presented with. Do you agree?
Mhm. Cheers.
Robert McCardle, you're on mute, Robert.
Yeah, can I ask two questions about this particular slide? The first one is in the headphones. If someone is visually impaired and wants to run, normally they'd wear a bib to warn other runners round about them that
Hmm.
they're visually impaired so that they can give them space. If you're in headphones, your awareness of what's round about you is different. You don't have the same spatial awareness of hearing people come from behind you. So could we require everyone that's medically prescribed with some sort of hearing issue to wear a bib to warn everyone round about them that they are passing a deaf runner, a runner who's not aware of them until they see them. And the second question I was going to ask was on
Mm.
the pushing of buggies. They said you couldn't push for a buggy if you're up at the front of the field, but surely, and we've all done park runs for those buggies and been run over by them because buggies go at different speeds, uphill and downhill, whereas runners tend to get a more similar speed. Uh, if someone's got a buggy and they are overtaking people or being overtaken, it doesn't matter where in the field they are. If you're a buggy and the rule says start at the back, stay at the back, don't compete, then you can't go through it because people with buggies are dangerous. They clip your heels. They take different lines at corners. If a buggy's in a race and it's not attempt to compete, start at the back, stay at the back.
Mm.
That's the two questions.
Yeah, no problem. I know you've always got some good questions for us, Robert, as well. I really like the idea of some kind of identifying mark, uh, whether that's a bib or an armband for, as you say, people who are perhaps deaf and need to have the headphones in, or some similar situation. Um, it sounds like a good idea to me. We'll certainly take that forward as a suggestion and see where we can kind of go with that. It could be quite a neat solution there, I think. On the buggies, um, yes, it is true. Park run, you do get buggies that are pretty fast and they're scything through the field, and as you say, clipping feet. We have asked the rules group if they would consider, because it does say start to the rear. Um, if they're starting to the rear, they could still be overtaking people. To look at that particular part of it, because as you say, that might not be the safest place for them to start. It might be somewhere else in the field. And we have asked for some further clarification and not attempting to compete. Even if they're not competing, their average pace could be a lot faster than someone who's right at the back of the field, for example. So we have asked that, as I say, the rules group to have a look at that as well, because personally, I think that's suitably vague. And I think we need a bit more definition around it. Does that help you on that one?
Yes, I think so. I we've got somebody in our club who could do 36 minutes for a 10K pushing a buggy. And if the rule say starts at the back of the field, he's going to overtake 80, 90% of the field. So as a runner, starting the correct position reduces the amount overtaken.
Yeah,
If you put a fast run at the back, they've got to overtake even more people. So it's a rule that doesn't really make sense as it is.
yeah,
Personally, I would like to
because
see no buggies in races, no dogs in races. There's park runs for that.
yeah, I can understand that.
And also, I'd stick it to your medical people. Babies' brains, babies' skulls aren't the same as the rest of us. To jiggle a baby's head around for a quarter an hour or 40 minutes or whatever,
Hmm.
I don't think that's any is necessarily good for it. So I
Yeah.
don't want to encourage it.
No, I don't, yeah, and I understand that completely. And I mean that's obviously why they don't allow carrying of babies as well. Um, but it is, I hadn't actually, you're right, depending on the surface they're running on, they could be jiggling about quite a bit in their pushchair, even with a harness on or whatever. It's not going to hold their head necessarily, is it? So we'd certainly would take that as well, actually, the kind of the welfare angle of the child and
Yes,
throw that into the
it's
mix as
not the
well.
head, it's the brain inside the skull. Like when a boxer gets hit, it's his brain hitting the bone that gives him the concussion.
Okay.
So as they go along, every bump, the brain is moving about inside it. And it's something we don't need it. It adds nothing to our sport.
Yeah. Okay. We hear you. We'll get some clarification around that. Um, is there anything in the chat on that one? Let me just double check. Uh, yeah, Paul was saying at the start of the call, you can't see my screen. I presume that was resolved. You can see it. Can you? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right, so we've got a few more points. That's enough on rules. Rules are lovely, but we don't want them to be the be all and end all. And we know there's endless numbers of rules that we could go through. So moving on from that, we wanted to cover a few other things as well. And one of the things we can do is obviously with all the stuff that's logged on the system, we can look at each individual adjudicator, how many invitations you've received, how many are pending, how many are rejected, all that sort of stuff. I can't say we spend hours and hours looking at it. But one thing is interesting. Some of you are really busy looking at the number of adjudications you do, and and I mean, thanks to all of you, these races can happen in supporting them, and there's huge number of adjudications that go on across the year. What we have noticed since the new system came in is that there's a much larger um, degree of rejections than we used to see on the old system. Um, and looking at it, when you reject a request, you can obviously type in the reason for your request. So we can see that, we know lots of you are busy with other officiating duties. You might be timing, you might be doing something with track and field, you could be, somewhere else doing some endurance role generally. Um, but what we do know is that a large percentage of the rejections are being generated by the system because people are not checking regularly on the system to see the invites that they've got. You do get a notification through on email saying you've been invited, but we all know we get 100 emails a day, don't we? And you don't always get a chance to read them all. Um, but the system automatically rejects the request if you haven't responded to it, either yes or no, within 14 days. And there's a large percentage of the rejections, and there are almost as many rejections as there are acceptances currently, um, but a huge percentage of them are on those timeouts. So our ask of you today from that is please make sure that you are going onto the system regularly through whichever email address you've got registered. You can log on to the system. You just go down to admin, you go down to the section there, and you can see pending requests. So have a look at those pending requests on a regular basis, because it will really help the race directors with getting their adjudicators in place. And we don't want hundreds of requests for each of you because they're not sure whether they're going to hear. So the more you can do with that, it helps us. One of the things that you might not realize is that we will not grant a license. The system will not let us grant a license unless Ben or I override it without an adjudicator accepting it. So all the time that we've got this rejection going on takes that licensing process, makes it longer. And obviously, as a race director, what you want to do is see your race going through the process by, have questions asked about it, of course, but getting through. You don't want it held up because there's lots of automatic rejections going on because it's not being checked regularly. So please do check them regularly. We do know as well, a lot of people in their areas know race directors, and you've got, separate email addresses that are on there because you know the race director, and they might email you and say, I'll pick out Robert because he's in the center of my screen. They might say, Robert, you've always adjudicated our race. Can you do it again? And you say, yeah, no problem. And then forget to go on the system and press accept because you've told the race director they can do it, that you can do it. The race director can't accept it on your behalf. So if you do have those separate communications going on where you've agreed to adjudicate a race, please make sure you log on to the system and press that accept button. If you're not sure where it is at any stage, you've forgotten, perhaps you haven't been on there for a few weeks, just raise a ticket, email me or Ben, whatever. Just say, oh, look, I've been asked. It's been a while since, it's been a couple of weeks since I said yes, or whatever it is. Just say, how do I say yes again? We'll happily tell you how to do that. And another point just to bear in mind, there is a message section on there, and we know that some adjudicators have rejected requests because the race director hasn't spoken to them in advance before the invitation goes out. Currently, there's no way of them doing that. So there is a message box. So make sure you read the message box, because we do say to race directors, look, if you don't know the race director, put a message in that box that says, please can you adjudicate my race? They can't email you. They don't have your email address if they don't know you. They can't ring you because they don't have your phone number. So often where they don't know adjudicators, the first you'll hear of it is that request coming in. It's not them being rude. They just don't have any other way of doing it. And often they'll put a message in there. That's fine. I mean, if you still want to say no, that's fine as well. But know that that's there for you, and obviously read those messages where you can. Just check there's no. Where are we? Richard is asked is the higher number of rejections also being caused by the fact that the RD just ticks everyone in the area rather than asking, then putting you down? I mean, it could be, Richard. It's not that easy to keep adding names in. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. And we know that there are some race directors that do that. So they actually have to type your name in to be able to do that. So it's a bit of a faff for them to do too many. We are looking at limiting the system so that they can only ask 4 people at any one time. Because we know in the busy parts of the season, particularly, you might have to ask a few different people. We think 4 is probably about the optimum number. That's part of the enhancement package that is going through. And I see Nigel agrees with that there. And then where are we? Yeah, and on the previous system, you could see the email there. Julie asked in connection with rejections, is it possible that 2 weeks is too short and 3 would be better? Problem there is if you're the person wanting to license an event and you ask a person and then you've got to wait up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then that person can't make it, you've then got to ask someone else, and you could find it might take you 4 or 5 months to find an adjudicator, which isn't ideal. Agreed, if they ask more than one, hopefully that won't happen. Mark Taylor says he's not receiving the email notification requests. Okay, we'll lock that down, Mark, and see what's happening with your email there. Maybe something in the system. So we'll do it. We'll touch base with you after the call and make sure that all the details are on there are correct, and help you with that. Presumably you've all found, we did get a query recently about viewing event information with start and finish times. You'll know that when you get a request, you can then go into admin events, click on your event, and you can read the start and finish times. You can see the location. Presumably you do, because you're all going there filling in forms and reports. But again, if you're not sure where that information is and somehow you've missed it, there is a guide that you can download. But you can also, obviously, if you're not sure about anything on the system, do ask myself or Ben. Some of the regional chairs might be able to help you with that as well. Now, it's come up now, obviously, in terms of that detail around the fact that on the old system, there was this spreadsheet you could download as a race director. I've race directed lots of times, as you all know. And you've got this spreadsheet with all the information on, which did go out of date, obviously. And you kept having to download the latest version of it. So a download's not the best way of doing it. But it'd be interesting to hear from you guys whether you think having some additional contact details would be of use to you in terms of the race director being able to contact you. Obviously, once they've contacted you, you've got their details anyway. Is that something that you guys think would be useful? I can see Richard giving the thumbs up there, as I can't see all the thumbs up that may or may not be being shown, Ben, so you might be able to see more than I can. Is that something you guys would do? You don't necessarily need to give us an immediate answer now, but it'd be useful to get a bit of a straw poll on whether we think that's a good idea. We'd have to contact, under the GDPR rules, we'd have to contact you to get permission to share the details, and we'd have to come up with the correct methodology for sharing it to make sure it's the latest information at all times, of course. We wouldn't have it as a download, but it could be something race directors could access probably on screen, to be honest, that they can then use. Paul Wood, you've got a question there. You're on mute, Paul, just at the minute.
Yeah, 2 questions, Barry. One, on the closed roads, if you've got a TTO, I'm assuming that means that all the roads onto that course must be, Barry, closed, marshalled?
Yeah, marshalled, coned. Could be cones with a road closed sign. It could be a marshal. Obviously, it has to have a road closed sign because that's the correct procedure under the Road Traffic Act. Or a barrier, as you say. Yeah, but it needs to have a marker on there that says physically the road that they're wanting to enter is closed. So if it's a side road leading to it, it does need that. We know we can't do every driveway in an urban environment, but what we'd say to any organisers, whether they be club or commercial, is regular marshals at intervals helps to police that. The recommendation from our insurers when we spoke to them about this was that it's also ideal and this is ideal, not necessarily compulsory, to actually put where you've got road ahead closed, and we all know the number of roadworks, sadly, that we've got everywhere in the country now, that it's worth putting race in progress or runners in road ahead as well as road closed ahead. So that the drivers, because we all get frustrated and you see road ahead closed, but you don't know why. They might have missed advanced warning signs. So the recommendation is put a runner's race in progress, that kind of thing with it as well. So that if they've got road ahead closed, it just gives them some more information. So hopefully the drivers don't even come up as far as the physical closure.
Okay. My second one relates to the child in a buggy. So I don't necessarily agree with the children in buggies in races. I think it's dangerous. Would the race director be beneficial to get some form of signed declaration from the parent or the runner? Because if there's an accident and the runner says, well, you allowed this and your course was unsafe, but you say, well, actually the course was safe, it was marshalled, and they sue the race director.
Yeah. I mean, that's where that safety and risk assessment comes in.
Yeah.
Because if they've done a safety and risk assessment that says they believe it's safe, if it later turns out, obviously, that the runner alleges it wasn't, we'd go back to that paperwork. I don't know, if I'm honest, whether a declaration is the recommended or best suitable way to do it, but we'll speak to the insurers and legal people
I think so, because
around that.
Yeah, there is the issue there that is it their own child? Is it someone else's child? If the race director permits it and then there's an accident,
Mm.
you know, who's picking up the bill?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we do, like, from a race director point of view, there is directors and officers liability insurance, but obviously we don't want it to reach that stage. But we'll ask about that declaration side of things.
Okay.
Okay, Eddie Oliver, you're next.
Yes, I raised that point because at the Southampton Marathon last year, I missed it because I was running part of the route. Someone carried their child across the line. I think it was a famous person. I'm not sure who it was, but they put it on social media advertising it as well.
Interesting. And was that for a short distance, Eddie, or was
It
it?
was just over the finish line, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, that, isn't it? Because we do
Yeah.
see in some of the big races, someone will scoop up a child and sort of do the last little bit.
Yeah.
Shouldn't really happen. I guess it's a little bit of a judgment call there. But it shouldn't really be happening, should it? I mean, really, the child shouldn't be able to get onto the course, should they? And not
No,
particularly in a big race.
no, and the Southampton Marathon is done quite well. It is barriered, so they must have taken their child a sort of 100 meters away from the finish,
Yeah.
which is probably a bit too far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, if it's the last couple of meters, it's probably not a big issue, but 100 meters is a long way, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah. I mean, you would be in your right, or the race director would be in their right to disqualify the person on that basis.
Yeah,
If it's a high profile celebrity, I agree that that's a difficult situation.
yeah. Perhaps
So recently at an event, father picked up the child, tripped over the timing mats. Luckily, he fell thing, and the child landed on him, but it could have been quite nasty.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the one of the concerns about doing it, isn't it? Not least the bouncing around of the child is what happens if you fall over or a runner collides with you. There's all sorts of stuff that could happen there, isn't there? So tricky one. Where are we? Not sure if it's changed, but a condition of road closures, this is in the chat, not sure if it's changed, but a condition of road closures was you dropped a letter into all properties with reasonable access to the road. Depends on the Highways Authority. Sometimes the Highways Authority have adopted a bit of tolerance around that. If you've got a race in a town centre that the road closures affect, I don't know, let's say 1,000, 2,000 homes, sometimes the highways authorities will give a dispensation to say, as long as you have made every attempt to communicate, you don't necessarily have to put a letter through 2,000 letterboxes where it's not practical to do so. But that is down to that local highways authority to either dispense with it or not. So again, that's where those terms that might be applied within the TTRO come into place, which are always shared with the race director when that is issued to them. Robert, is that a new hand up? You're on mute.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Yeah, okay, lovely.
I think it was when we met in Birmingham, we discussed the 3-year limit for event adjudicators. I've got a number of races I work with regularly who I trust me, and I think they're high quality.
Yeah.
But essentially, it's me marking my own homework.
Yes.
I see from your graph, there's different ratios in different parts of the country. Some people have got enough adjudicators, some areas don't. So I'm not expecting a blanket thing. But if the regional leads could look at it in conjunction with you, because if we've got enough event adjudicators, perhaps I should be barred from going back to see if I did a good job the previous year. Whereas I know that it's not something we can get today, but is there any way we can move forward to that?
I think, that's an interesting point on a regional basis, because I think if we look at the London graph, we're unlikely to get there anytime soon. Some of the other regions are more or less there, and others are close to it. So there could be a scenario, I guess, where in conjunction with the regional chairs, as you say, that we look at it. I mean, maybe we could trial it in an area where we know we've got enough adjudicators to see how it works. And then depending on the trial, we could then include other regions. It's an interesting one, something certainly to consider. Okay, so just moving on for the moment, we'll have a chance for some more Q&As in a sec anyway. Just wanted to talk about measurement certificate renewals. And a lot of you will be aware of the current process of that. A certificate, of course, is measured. The certificate is valid for a 10-year period from the date it is measured, not necessarily the date of the event, but from the date it is measured. Could be a number of months before the event takes place, of course. So there might only be 9 iterations they can use it for, or 9 years. But at the moment, in addition to that, the race director is required each new date that the race is happening, which could be more than once a year, or it could be just once a year, to go on to the course measurer's website, tap in a code, put the latest date on the certificate. A certificate gets reissued, same certificate number with the current race date on it. Our proposal, which we believe will be ratified, is that from the 1st of January, we will not require the race director to do that updating of the race date, but we will have an additional question in the licensing process to be sure that they know they need to use that measured course and that they're declaring that they do. It's an unnecessary administration task at the moment for both the Association of UK Course Measurers to undertake, and it seems a bit of a pointless exercise for the race director when they can certify to us as part of the licensing process that happens. We've sent that to the rules group who are meeting next week to confirm that we're able to do so. We have looked in the rule book and discussed it with them verbally, and they've indicated that should be fine, but obviously it needs to just go to that rules group for complete ratification. If that happens, which we believe it will, we'll obviously confirm that with all of you and all the race directors. Obviously, if they've already done that and got the next iteration of the race on the certificate, that's fine. It's not a problem. Just means they won't need to do it next time. And the course measurers will alter the certificate. So obviously it's not got a race date from previous on it. It will say when it's valid from and when it's valid until, but won't have the current race date on there. I think it will make things easier. Paul, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just an admin nightmare trying to sort out all the certificates, and it's a positive move forward. What will be along the line is that the race directors will need to ensure that they've got the course measurement details on how the course is laid out. If any changes are made to that course in any way that hasn't been agreed with the course measurement group, then the course will require to be remeasured.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we'll obviously be communicating that out there to everyone. So we'll confirm that with you and obviously inform everyone there. Okay, we've got just over 5 minutes left. I'm sure there's other questions that some of you may have. So now's your chance. Any other questions that you would like to ask us? Nigel Taylor.
Hiya. Just on that about course measurements and stuff. So, as an example, an event I just adjudicated at, on the day there was some vehicles parked within the finish area.
Yeah.
So they had to move the finish area because there was cars in it. I just used my discretion and just noted it on the comments in my forms at the end. Is that the right thing to do, or are we saying that at the 11th hour we should have thought about that?
No, I mean it's you can't you can't have known in advance that that situation was going to happen. So I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, Nigel, it wasn't a massive shift away, and the race director very carefully measured multiple times that change. So it's no good just wandering along there with your watch and saying, there we are, we're done. Check it multiple times, make sure that the distance isn't affected. And as you quite rightly say, just make a note on your report back and say, look, there were some cars parked there. They had to make a small change. Obviously, if it's significant, then that's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, no, well, it was listed, I think it was about 20 meters. So
yeah,
that was it. So, but yeah, no, that's fine. Cool, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Robert Cook.
Hi, Barry. Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Lovely. Right, I got a couple of points. One, on the form that we fill in,
yes,
in a couple of places, there are what I call compound questions. One that says whether any marshals there to assist runners and did it match the level in the event plan. That's actually a yes and a no answer, but you've only got a yes or a no. So I'm hoping that eventually this will be sorted out in the next iteration of the form that we get.
So the first question is what, Robert? Just take me through that again.
It's on the first page. It says, were there marshals to assist runners in the following areas, and did the level of cover provided match that detailed in the event plan?
I see.
So sometimes, yes,
might
there
be
are
yes
marshals,
and then no.
but there's not enough of them. So that's a yes and a no.
Yes.
And then lower down, it talks about raising flags, which is my other question. But it would say, please select whether the flag is applicable to the host organisation, the race director, or both. And you can't put both in. You either have to choose host or race director. I've tried putting both and it won't have it. So there's a couple of glitches there that I'm assuming somebody will be working on.
Well, we can now if we're not already, Robert. Yes.
Okay. And the one thing, which is a plea from my heart, is it says, were any flags raised about this section? obviously it puts it in the past tense, which I assume means I'm supposed to be talking to a race director about a flag. But what do you mean by a flag?
So a flag is where you're raising a concern. When you raise a flag, it notifies us. If you just put a concern in the box, it obviously relies on us spotting the adverse comment in the box. If you raise a flag, that stays as a flag. So on the next application they make for the event, that flag will also be visible during the licensing process.
Okay.
So it's rather than
That's
an
something you're going to use in
advisory,
the
it's a bit
future.
more serious than that.
Okay, so the question needs to be in the present tense rather than the past tense.
Yeah, are there any flags you're raising in this
Yeah,
section?
yeah. Do
Yeah,
you wish to?
yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
no problem. Okay. Any other questions from anyone else? We've got a couple of minutes left. Gordon Geach, you're next.
Yeah, I just is there because there's some of the things raised on the call today. I mean, I've been an adjudicator for 13 odd years, and it seems like it's almost as if English athletics is trying to merge a race referee with a event adjudicator. Because when I started out, it was you got similar to what we can download with a whole lot of questions which you filled out as you went around the race.
Yeah,
But it does seem now the scope of an event adjudicator has increased massively.
right.
So
Um,
I'm just wondering if there's any document that sort of states, and I know we've got the checklist, but some of the stuff discussed tonight is not sort of totally highlighted in the checklist. It's almost like, were there any observations? But what observations, are we all looking for the same
yeah,
observation, or is it, just up to the individual's discretion?
yeah, no, it's a good point. I think it would be useful. We can have a look and see if there's anything that existed previously that gave a guidance note to that. But if there's nothing available, we can certainly write that and make that available. I mean, the role itself hasn't changed in the last number of years. On the Run Britain system to this system, the questions are pretty much the same. There's been some small revisions to the questions, but not a significant change. We've tried to make them easier to understand where we can.
Well, there have been some that some of the race directors I've spoken to, like, the the notifying. I mean, when I was a race director, I used to do this anyway, but
Yeah,
notifying the ambulance service of any medical conditions, which is a double-edged sword because I could send them a list of all the race numbers and any medical conditions, but we all know runners swap race numbers. So the medical providers I've spoken to have really said they ignore that information because if they follow it and they give the wrong treatment, they're in trouble.
yeah. I mean, on that specifically, bib swapping is obviously not allowed unless
Yeah.
it's organised through the race director or the promoting body. The runner can be disqualified for that. Obviously, if they're in a club, they might face further sanctions as well, which prevent them entering other races. If the medical provider is doing everything in good faith that's been provided to them, that's all they can do. They can't know that there's a bib swap. You're right. Um, Whether or not it's the correct approach in terms of sharing those details is part of the medical review that we're currently undertaking,
Yeah.
which will be completed in the first half of next year. So there may be a change to that, but obviously I don't want to preempt the results of
Yeah.
the medical review.
And I assume from an RD's point of view, um, issuing that information, because it's obviously covered by GDPR,
Yeah,
um, is not a problem.
no, because it's legitimate use of the data for the
Yeah.
purposes of the race.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Paul Wood?
to actually to answer that, the other person's query, the reason that you share the medical data with your first aid team is to give them an idea of the sort of things that they could be facing. So from the point of view, they're still going to treat a casualty as a casualty, but it goes back to a race I went to where it was middle of the summer. The race went through is a country race, went through rapeseed fields. There was over 1,000 runners. Over 100 declared that they got asthma. On the day, they treated 20 people for asthma. The medical provider said if they hadn't have had that information, they wouldn't have brought enough stuff with them, and it would have then required them to declare it as a major medical issue. It's about the medical provider being given enough information so that they can cover the items that's needed.
Yeah, and obviously as part of that, all under consideration in the medical review. But yeah, as Paul indicates there. Any other questions? I'm just conscious we're a few minutes over. Any other questions from anyone else? No, looks like we're there. So thanks very much, everyone, for joining. I must say as well, once again, we do really appreciate all of the time that you give to the sport. The licenses we issue. Obviously, we can't do that process without you. And genuinely, I know we don't get many opportunities to say it. We are genuinely grateful, and we do thank you for everything that you do for the sport, for us, for the race directors. It is very much appreciated. But thanks very much for joining the call. There'll obviously be another one coming up. It'll be after Christmas now, of course. But we do appreciate your time tonight. Bearing in mind we won't see you before Christmas, I will say have a good Christmas. I know it's really early to say it. But in the meantime, if there's anything else that you want to discuss with us, please do get in touch with us. But thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.